Well, Nigeria 2015 here on Channels Television. Just before that short one, we were trying to look at the figures in the last election, the presidential and National Assembly elections, and see if there will be any form of significant increase in those that will be turning out tomorrow in 29 states to cast their ballot. And Dr. Naji, looking at what Captain Aliyu has said, as well as Mr. Ogumadu, it means, therefore, that there is some form of confidence we had established in the presidential elections that ultimately may be transported into tomorrow's election. Do you share in that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I had even signposted that in my earlier submissions, that tomorrow a lot of people will turn out, to vote. Not only for the fact that the security agencies have,
reassured them.
Yes, reassured them, and we have seen, because security, like Aliyu said, is a confidence issue. If you are not confident, no matter all the promises, if you don't have confidence that those guys can deliver, perhaps based on some historical experience, you will not believe them, and that will affect your conduct. But we have seen that barring some few skirmishes, which is natural during the presidential, significantly all the prophets of dooms over this country appear to have been proven wrong. Even the threat of Boko Haram in some areas that they were going to disrupt the election, it appeared that Nigerians and Nigeria made them to eat their word. So I believe that a lot of people will come out, and a lot more, like I said, appear to be at stake, in this election, more than even the presidential and the National Assembly elections, because these are localized issues that affect people on their day-to-day primary level of existence, if you like. So, the politicians within the various localities who are known and seen and tested, found worthy or wanting, as the case may be, have been on the prowl trying to, recruit or mobilize people to join their bandwagon and so on. So a lot of people who didn't vote the other time, either for security reason or card reader issue or kind of apathy, will join the queue this time around.
Very interesting case of punishment that INEC also tried to raise when the results were being released. So after every collation officer reeled out the results of their states, you were asked, were there any incidences? And then in some cases, or in most cases, there were maybe ballot box snatching or whatever it was. But the results for that area was cancelled. It meant that people did not get their results. Do you think that that also affects the behavior of politicians to ensure that polls are violence-free? Does that have any influence whatsoever?
Yes, indeed, it does. If you observe, in processes where you just read a riot act without carrying a big stick, and you become acculturated with that, you begin to see the nothing will happen syndrome in Nigeria. People go and do what they want to do, and when you talk to them, they say nothing will happen. And indeed, it doesn't. This time was different. This time was different to the effect that people invested time, effort, and took great risks to do dubious things, and something happened. So the way it went, if you just took a ballot box and probably walked 5 meters from where it's supposed to be, you nullify the entire thing. So you're actually wiping that slate off. So there's no reason for us to admit the contents of that ballot box in. So these people who actually they snatch ballot boxes for a living or something, they make money on giving commissions based on the ballot boxes they get, discover that they shoot themselves in the foot. Because the moment you do that, you have lost that polling station.
Now, it also depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you were trying to say you assumed that it was your opponent's stronghold, yes, and you're trying to ensure that your opponent doesn't also get away with any vote, would you also say that that is also a deterrent? Because I'm looking at states like Edo State. In Edo State, it was pretty obvious that the tension was quite high. One entire local government there, votes were suspended. They could not do elections. does it really deter, or do you think it is wise? Is it not the voters who are, at the end of the day, punished, so to speak?
Yeah, it's not the voters who are punished, because if you look at the entire system, if you look at the entire election process, the voters are becoming very quickly sensitized that the real power is not with the stalwarts, is not with the party cronies, is not even with the so-called contenders. The real power is with that voter and his voter's card. So at the point, if indeed you are dominating a particular place, for whatever reasons you discover ABC parties heavy there, then it's up to those people there who are ABC heavy to be vigilant and report any prospective or suspected ballot box kidnappers, ballot box snatchers, to the law enforcement agency, so they can route their activities before they render the entire local government's efforts nullity.
I want to ask you, Barrister, how much do you think that the results of the last presidential elections how much do you think it would influence in this election? How do you think it will influence voters?
Well, to the extent that the results relatively captured the will of the people, to that extent it will have significant impact on coming elections. Mm-hmm. But let's put it straight. The reason why you have resentment on the part of the electorate is when you have a result that largely does not represent what they did and what they expected. And which is why the most sensitive aspect of the exercise is not during voting per se. It is at the point of the declaration of the results. Now, why it has become extremely difficult for mischief makers to also key into that agenda of violence is when the result matches the expectation of the people. There's very little that anyone can do. And I give you two practical examples. As at the time, Elder Godswill Orubebe, who is also from the same Niger Delta where I come from, was hitting his head on the wall. In retrospect, you will find that President Jonathan was already composing his acceptance speech, because it was a question of hours after that misadventure that the president congratulated the president-elect. Now, if it wasn't clear to the contestant, let alone the electors, that what has become represents the will of the people, Orubebe would have had the bill. There was a sense in which people would have, but when you check the totality of the exercise, regardless of the pockets of difficulties and challenges here and there, and find that what is coming out clearly represents what the exercise stood for, there will be very little any person can do about it. So it has a direct effect on the electorates and their voting pattern, including their behavior. So that would be the direct response to that.
I'm also looking at the 3 tiers of government. This is elections. I think attention is mostly on the gubernatorial election. So you find out a lot of voters are aware of who their governorship candidates are, but they're not very aware of the power of the legislature in the scheme of things, so to speak.
That also reflected.
Is that going to change?
It reflected even in the presidential election, and I'll tell you how. Many people knew about Jonathan and General Buhari, amidst other contestants. But they didn't have on their fingertips the same level of information and knowledge regarding candidates for the National Assembly. Mm-hmm. The same could play out this time, but with a difference. Given that these contenders are closer to the people, the interaction level is even more intimate. They are supposed to be closer to the people. Are they really closer to the people? And I would say that this will be part of the improvement that we can do. It is no use that we go into an election thinking that we can do one and leave the other. Indeed, the essence of democracy is that process by which the organs of the institution itself, the branches of government, when eventually constituted, will stand firm. if you are interested in who becomes your governor, you should even be more interested in who becomes members of the State House of Assembly. The reason is simple. The governance itself is expected to be driven by the executive. But the excesses of the executive in discharge of that duty can only be moderated by the legislature. So if you have, if you like, nonchalant characters, dominating state houses of assembly, the challenge will be back to you as the electorate, as though you never donated that power to a group of persons to check the executive.
One wonders how all of this changed overnight, because before you joined us, we were trying to look at how much of awareness the voters now have, knowing full well that they have the power to change things. Time was when the assembly, as Mark rightly asked, do they or are they true representatives of the people? How in touch have they been with the people? Because this will also guide people as they go to cast their ballot. I'd like to start with Dr. Naji. Let's look at the closeness of the politician to the electorate and how this can influence his ballot tomorrow.
Yes. In the past, when the voter really didn't matter, the political parties presented themselves so that even if they nominated a goat or a cow for any position, you were voting the political party, not the candidates. But now the voters have become a little bit discriminant in their conduct, such that they can say, okay, party A, I vote for your candidate for X office. But party B, sorry, the other candidate, we have seen him, he has potentials, or he had done something in the other party where he was, I think he should continue. So with that, and the level of political education among Nigerians, there's still some sentiments here and there, but you cannot get, that's why the process of purification is always the process that leads to premium brands. In making a product, there are different levels of, purifications, which will be priced accordingly. In the sense of this, you have a situation emerging where political parties will now have to work very hard to bring or throw up candidates that on their own have something they can bring to the table, because they can no longer hoodwink the electorate into voting because this is the political party that you have projected will take care of that. So,
do you think, sorry to interrupt,
yes,
but do you think that we should separate the dates for the National Assembly elections and the gubernatorial elections? Because some people will say that they tend to hide under, their political parties. So when a political party, for instance, is campaigning for its governorship candidate, for instance, it says, vote for our governorship candidate and this party and all the other people, for that particular party. You don't know who those people are.
I think we'll come back to that. When we'll come back, we'll look at that and also see how this analogy possibly maybe have gravitated us towards an independent candidacy in the end of the day, at the end of the day. Well, we'll take a moment now. We'll return shortly on Nigeria 2015.